All right, so parallelogram, first of your 5 properties, opposite sides are parallel. Opposite sides parallel. We know how to mark parallel. It's a little arrow, or if you prefer a triangle, that works too. I'm going to go with a little arrow. Those are parallel. But there's a second pair, which is kind of why I get the name parallelogram. There's lots of parallel happening. Those 2 sides are parallel, as well as these opposites. We give them a double mark so that it's different than the other one. Opposite sides parallel. Number 2, opposite sides congruent. Not only are they parallel and never touch, but they're the same length. Let me pause for just a second. I don't need you to draw this. When we learned the trapezoid, it had a pair of parallel sides. If they're parallel, does that mean they're going to be the same length? No, that did not happen in the trapezoid. However, it is happening in our figure today. Not only are these parallel, but they are the same length, as are your other pair of opposite sides. They're the same length. I should have done that in red. Okay, so when we did our kite, there were 3 properties, one about sides, angles, diagonals. When we did our trapezoid, there was a property about sides, angles, diagonals. Because we have 5 properties today, there are actually 2 properties that deal with sides. There are going to be 2 properties that deal with angles and 1 about diagonals. It just kind of helps you remember them since you don't get to use your gold sheet on any assessments. Property number 3, opposites, angles, congruent. So pick any angle, put a little arc in it, and then find its opposite. How do you know which one is opposite? Well, think of yourself as walking around the figure. If I take a walk, not that one, that would be the next one. Not that one, that would be the next one. We want the opposite one, not the very next one. So, of course, the opposite is going to be over here. Those angles are alike. And these are opposites. Those angles are congruent, equal measure. Remind me, what do all 4 angles in a quadrilateral add up to? 360. Did we all know that? Is this a quadrilateral? I thought it was a parallelogram. It's both. They're all quadrilaterals. If it has 4 sides, it is a quadrilateral. Quad 4, lateral side. 4 side quadrilateral. This is a more specific quadrilateral. Just like if I say you're a sophomore and you're a high schooler, everybody is a high schooler, but you're more specifically a sophomore. This is a quadrilateral, 4 sides, but it's more specific parallelogram. All right, property number 4. Consecutive angles are supplementary. Consecutive angles are supplementary. Out of the 4 words I just wrote in blue, 3 are vocab words. Angle. Obviously, we know what angles are by now. They're not the sides. They're the angles. We know those. Consecutive. Hopefully, we remember that term. If not, it should be already on your gold sheet over by kite. I told you if you're not going to remember, write it down. So look at your kite if you've forgotten. Jack, did your paper say what consecutive is, or do you remember?
The angles that are like right by each other.
Yeah. Yeah, right by or next to. So consecutive means next to. So angles that are next to each other are supplementary. Aubrey, do you remember what supplementary means? They add up to 180. So an angle and one next to it add to 180. Let me give you a couple options on how to draw this. You could start at any angle you want. Let's say I pick this angle. This angle and the next one I come to. So if I take a walk and I walk around, this is the next one I come to, they're going to add to 180. Or maybe I want to walk this way on my walk. Those are next to consecutive. They're going to add to 180. I could start anywhere. I could start here if I want. If I take a walk, that one is consecutive. We're going to add to it. So pick an angle. However you'd like to draw it, pick an angle and take a walk. You can walk either direction. I'm going to walk this way, it's shorter. Those two angles add to 180. Questions on what that property means? Lots of vocab. Last property. Diagonals bisect each other. Just draw one diagonal for now. I'm going to actually do solid lines instead of dotted lines. So everybody draw one diagonal. Bennett, you remember what bisect means? Yep, in the middle, like there's two equal parts. So watch what happens. As I'm drawing this other diagonal, I just bisected, I just cut that diagonal into two. Or you could think about it this way. If this was the diagonal you have, as I draw this one, cut into two. So go ahead and draw them both as solid lines. And I don't know, we'll start with this one. That's cut into equal pieces. I have to use 3 tick marks because I've already done 1 and 2. The other diagonal is also cut into 2, so I'll go with 4 marks. So it could be like 6 and 6 and 2 and 2, or whatever it is. They're not all the same. When we get to the rectangle, you will find they actually are all the same, but not in this figure. Okay, so those are your 5 properties. Again, 2 things about sides. They are parallel, never touch, both sets. The sides are also the same length, both sets of sides, opposite. Angles. Opposite angles are congruent. You have 2 sets of those. Consecutive angles are supplementary. An angle and the one next to it add to 180. Finally, the diagonals bisect each other. The diagonal is cut into 2 equal parts. The other diagonal is cut into 2 equal parts. All right, let's do a practice problem on your white note sheet. Number 1, I'm just going to give you 2 or 3 minutes to see if you can come up with all the angles. One's been given to you. If you finish that, see if you can find AB and DC. stuff. Read the properties again. You're starting with angles, so you'd want to look at property number 3 and 4. All right, you guys are doing good, practicing on your own. Let's take a look at how you did. Find all of the angles. I think many of you probably started with angle C. There's a property that says opposite angles are congruent. So this one is 46. Couple ways to find the others. We know they all add to 360 and B and D match. But I'm just going to use property number 4, which says an angle. And it's consecutive, the one next to it, add to 180. So that's going to be 134, and its opposite is 134. You are not required to show any work. If the quiz says, how did you know, or state the property, then you state which of the 5 properties you used. We used opposite angles are congruent, and I use consecutive angles are supplementary. On the extra credit I'm going to give you tomorrow, there's going to be questions that I'm going to require you to list which property you picked. Okay, let's look at AB. We know that AB is not an angle because it's 2 letters. AB is right here at the side. What do I know about sides? Opposite sides are parallel. That's not really going to help me find the length. Opposite sides are congruent. That might be helpful. This side and its opposite are congruent or equal. So 7B minus 16 equals 5B. Some people might have moved the 5B over, but then there's nothing on that side, which is fine. It's a 0. You could also move the 7B. Raise your hand if you move the 5B. Raise your hand if you move the 7. Okay, I heard from about half of you. It could work either way. I'm going to go ahead and move the 7B. Then I have negative 16 equals negative 2B. Either way you do it, you should get 8 for B. The final answer, though, A to B, I need to plug in 8 right there. I get 40. Then I need to find D to C, plug in 8. I get 40, and they should match because they're opposite sides. Any questions on that first example? Okay, number 2, I want you to change something for me, please. Your paper says quadrilateral, MNOP. If I don't tell you it's a parallelogram, you don't get to use one of those 5 properties. So please change your paper. Cross out quadrilateral. It is a quadrilateral. But you can be more specific, and I'd like you to change the wording. It is a parallelogram. So now you have 5 properties you can look at. I'll give you time on this one, and then we'll go over it just like the last one. You're stuck. Look at property number 5. I'm making a new seating chart for after Thanksgiving. Is there anybody that prefers the front? All right, let's take a look at this one. X. X is right here. That's part of a diagonal in property number 5. Diagonals bisect each other. So this is equal to this. 20 equals x plus 5. You don't even have to plug that back in. You just end at 15, your x value. Y. Y is also a part of a diagonal, and this diagonal is also cut into 2 equal pieces, bisected. So 6y minus 8 equals 2y plus 1. You can check your algebra. I get 9 divided by 4, which is 2.25. You get a decimal and you're like, oh, that might be wrong. It's a decimal. Well, plug it back in. Plug your y in here. See what you get. Plug your y in here. See what you get. Let me just do that real quick. 6 times 2.25 minus 8 is 5.5 for that piece. 2 times 2.25 plus 1 is 5.5. So is my decimal correct? Yeah, it worked out. Not very often we have decimals, but definitely we do have them sometimes. Questions on that one? All right, we are going to do this one together. You can work ahead if you want, but I want to make sure we know how to do this because there's a lot of questions here. We have a parallelogram. We're asked to find all the angles, and I don't just mean MATH. I mean we need to find every little angle. There's a lot of places you could start. Does anybody have an angle you know right away just by looking at it?
The 115 on the other side.
Yep. So you're talking. Oh, there's no letter there. So let's call this MOA. So MOA, you say is 116? Yep. 115. Thank you. Yep. Yep. Very good. Vertical angles. Good. Anybody got something else? How about here? Don't these together make a straight line? Straight line's 180. So grab your calculator. 180 degrees minus 115 is 65. Okay, we've got vertical again with 65. This one's got to be 65. Hopefully you notice those. Let me show you something a lot of people forget to see, which is kind of hard and why I really wanted to go over this one with you. I grabbed my highlighter. Because I know these are parallel, let me show you what happens. Parallelogram. Opposite sides are parallel. There's 8 yellow angles. Down here, I can see this yellow angle. I don't want this one up here because that's partly in and partly outside the triangle. I want this yellow angle. Hopefully we recognize what those are called. Can anybody tell me? Yeah. Ooh, not quite. Another guess. Vertical would be like 115 and 115. Think about it this way. Does that help? What are those called? Alternate interior. There's just a lot going on in your picture, but when you sort of take it outside of the picture, if I have parallel lines, alternate interior, because they're both on the inside, one is above the transversal, one is below. So please on your paper, mark those alike. So this one is 39. Anybody have another idea on an angle? Yeah.
44, the same thing as the 39. Alternate interior.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes. So, very good. Here's what he's saying. Let me get that highlighter again. If I would have picked this transversal, I know that these angles are going to match. I don't have a number for those. The 44 don't quite line up, but it will. You'll see why in just a second. I'm going to come back to that. You can mark these alike, though. We know they will be. Here's something that's going to kind of snowball. You'll see this a lot. Look up here, please. Notice I have a triangle. What do all 3 angles in a triangle add up to? 180. Grab your calculator. 180 minus 39 minus 115 is 26.
So for angle M, like the other side,
Yep.
would that be also 26?
Right. So, yep. So this one is 26 because of alternate interior. Now, even though this angle over here is partly in and out of the triangle, that whole yellow angle, watch what happens. See if this makes sense. Doesn't this angle and this angle have to be the same since they're opposite? So if this is the sum of 26 and 44, and we already have a 26, wouldn't that have to be 44? Hopefully you followed that. Opposite angles are congruent. So they have to add this whole thing, or I should say this, has to add to this. And you already had 26. So. All right, what do we have left? We've got, here's another triangle. Go ahead and use this triangle to find a missing angle. I get 71. And then if all of angle A is 39 and 71, and this is opposite, it's got to match. It already has a 39, it's going to have to be 71. You'll have one like this on your homework where I give you a figure and you have to find like 8 different angles. You'll need vertical angles. You'll need what we call triangle sum theorem. All angles in a triangle add to 180. You might need alternate interior, all those other things. Let's take a look at your homework real quick. You are doing 15-3, 1 page front and back. The last question is a proof. I'd be happy to help you with the proof, but I want you to attempt it first and then call me over and say, could you look at what I have and help me finish it, not just, I don't know what to do. Give it a try first. I'll give you one hint on the proof. You're given that ABCD is a parallelogram, so you know 5 properties are true about that. My hint is probably use property number 2 in your proof. That might help you. All right, you guys have the rest of the time. There shouldn't be any phones, just working, and let me know what you need help with.